With the next big update to Throne of Liberty, we'll be getting Tier 2 gear. This will be purple stuff that can be upgraded to level 12 versus the current maximum level 9. What this means is a lot of the current tier 1 gear will become irrelevant. You will not be able to upgrade that gear to tier 2. With one exception, your Archboss weapons. So in this video specifically, I want to cover all of the new tier 2 weapons upcoming, and you can potentially save yourself tons of lucent by not going for some really expensive field boss gear that won't be upgradable to tier 2, like the Adentist Greatsword. Even though it is best in slot right now, you might not want to go for it because by the time tier 2 hits, your simple, cheap tier 2 gear can just be better than it. And so in this video, I want to go through each of the different weapon types and we can see exactly what to expect with this tier 2 update. We begin with the Greatsword. We have the Battlefield Warrior's Broadsword. Upgraded to level 12 is 273 maximum base damage and is very easy to obtain by just killing some mobs. But with it already having 273 max base damage, you'll already find that's on par with the Adentist Greatsword with the maximum of the 60 base damage boost through its bonus. So if you're patient, I honestly wouldn't spend any amount of lucent to get that when the next big update comes out with tier 2, which just at a base level has more damage. What is quite cool is we're getting these Black Anvil weapons that come with this Black Anvil Passion bonus. Basically to give you a bunch of Solent, Mastery XP, but will not stack with other Black Anvil weapons. So they're pretty much just for farming. Next up we have the Celestial Cyclone Warblade. This will be very easy to get just by killing some mobs. And also, again, over 270 base damage with a bonus of Blazing Tornado. Keep in mind these translations are not fully accurate for our game on global. I assume that's going to be like Devastating Smash gets a attack speed boost, you get a movement speed boost, and your attacks apply serial firebombs. And that's a massive bonus amount of stats there. Then you have another Archboss weapon, Giant Cody's Corruption Sword. It will be this Archboss right here in the new areas on the map. Yes, we'll get level 55 cap with that as well, which will come with a whole lot of new story. This one has a significant boost in maximum base damage, and then Giant Cordy's Spore Poison effect. So your Death Blow skill is going to create an area for 4 seconds, and enemies will take a bunch of damage over time, along with reducing their melee ranged and magic evasion by 300. And again, a massive boost to attributes there and hit chance. That's definitely going to be a contender with the Tevant's Warblade. But that will be upgradable to level 12, so it's unlikely you'll feel the need to actually upgrade to this next Archboss weapon. So that's somewhat of a relief for those of you who've spent a ton on getting these. Archboss weapons are basically tier 2 weapons in a tier 1 game for us on global. Next we have the Grey Eyes Destructive Blood Sword, simply coming from co-op dungeons, so should be pretty easy to get. Again, over 270 maximum base damage with a bonus on your Da Vinci to massively increase your health regen and the duration by 1.5 seconds. This is most likely just going to be for tanks, I guess. A massive boost of strength, max HP, and a bit of cooldown speed. And as we looked at already, the Immortal Titanic Quake Blade, simply coming from killing enemies in like open world dungeons, allowing you to attack a specific location 4 times instead of moving forward, increasing the attack's range and damage for that skill. Your Gaia's Crash ability. And finally, there's another field boss weapon dropping from this guy, a level 55 field boss. At level 12, nearly as much base damage as say the Archboss weapon, with then a bonus to buff up those 2 skills, the damage increased by 50% and the cooldown decreased by 15%. That's Valiant Brawl with and without specialization. And yes, an absolute massive amount of attributes. That's all of the new Greatswords upcoming. And again, we find every single new tier 2 Greatsword is going to replace our previous tier 1 Greatswords, except for the Tevant one, which can be upgraded to level 12 to match tier 2. The only exception I would say is perhaps if you're a tank and still want to run Duke Magmas for the extra threat effect. But I think the sheer base damage boosts the new tier 2 ones will give you will just outperform it in terms of threat generation. So definitely don't go buying a Dentist, especially when, you look on Korea, the price is 80 Lucent. That's how much they value this weapon when this update drops. So now we move to our sword and shields. This will also have a Black Anvil variant, again just for farming with Black Anvil's Passion. Then there's the Blade of Fiendish Fortitude, which gives you Purgatorial Barrier, healing received increased by 30% during counter barrier. With a bunch of strength, hit chance and cooldown speed, it'll be definitely a very good PvP weapon. And you'll get it just by killing mobs, so it'll be very easy to obtain. And with that amount of extra base damage, it may very well replace any of the current tier 1s we have. Then there's the Bulwark of Invulnerability, also simply coming from killing enemies. And this comes with Devastating Chain. Your chain hook attacks 3 enemies in a 5-meter radius around the target. Then your Crimson's Demon Crushing Sword, simply obtained through your co-op dungeons with Dimensional Essence, and it gives you the ability to gain an increase to damage and heal to your Witty Strike ability. Your Dagon's Gale Sword will be a field boss drop, and it comes with the bonus of Dagon's Storm, increasing the damage and deflect effect up to 7 times for your shield throw with the Whirling Shield spec. Then your Delzuno's Ice Sword is going to be another Archboss weapon coming from this guy right here. And it brings a bonus that increases the damage, the range, and a chance to bind the target on your Annihilating Slash ability. Then there's the Unshakable Knight Sword, simply coming from killing mobs, and it's just a really basic level sword with no extra bonus. And that's all the tier 2 swords coming. And so getting Nearmat as a tank just to be very annoying in PvP is still going to be very viable. You won't deal as much damage, but you're a tank, you're not really striving to do that. But you can see the Koreans don't value it very highly, 89 Lucent. And keep in mind again, Queen Belandiers, if you did want to get it, will also be upgradable to the same level as other tier 2 gear, meaning you won't miss that much base damage versus those other Archboss weapons. So it's pretty much going to be down to, do any of those bonuses actually appeal to you? Next we jump to our daggers. We have the Bearcat's Seductive Blade, simply coming from co-op dungeons. It will have these stats with Norn's Temptation. On skill hit, you have a chance to reduce the endurance of your target and increase your base damage. A very solid upgrade from your Wicked Thorns, which are definitely going to miss a ton of base damage versus these new co-op dungeon ones. You will also have Black Anvil daggers, simply for farming. And then a new Archboss weapon set from this guy right here as well, with all of these stats. And you get a bonus where your Phantasmal Smokescreen has a chance to apply Petrification to all enemies within range for 1 second every second. Then we have the Destiny Binders, simply coming from killing some mobs. You can see all the stats here and the bonus it will give you, basically giving you the specialization for your Frenzied Sword Dance without actually having to spend those 3 points. Then the Leviathan weapons will simply be a new field boss weapon set, bringing all these stats along with a bonus to your Umbral Spirit or Thunder Spirit, increasing the damage by 20% and the duration on a critical hit by 0.2 seconds. That could be very powerful. Then the Mortal Thorn daggers, you'll just have to kill some mobs to get them. They come with these stats and no special bonus. And finally, the Peerless Obsidian Razors, you'll just have to kill these mobs. And they bring these stats with the bonus to increase the attack range of Fatal Stigma and the damage. Again, basically giving you this specialization for free with also a nice damage boost. So most definitely, these tier 2 weapons will replace all of the tier 1 weapons aside from the Tevent Fangs, which you might still want to use for its bonus, and you can upgrade it to level 12 to give pretty much the highest base damage of any daggers in tier 2. Even if we look at the new Archboss weapons, they're not going to have as much base damage, but I assume because the support effector is actually pretty powerful, petrifying your enemy for the duration of Phantom Smokescreen. I just highly recommend not to go out and say buy the Koas and daggers, as yeah, you can see they'll be completely replaced when these tier 2 daggers are coming out. But now we move on to the new crossbows. We start with Ackman's Rupturing Bow. This will be a new field boss weapon drop with a bonus. Whenever you use quickfire, you shoot an additional projectile at a random target within 3 meters. It will deal damage equal to 120% of base damage and applies quickfire's gale effect. Projectiles do not apply any other effect, and the quick fire damage is increased by 8%. Then we have a Burkant's Spineflower crossbow, simply from co-op dungeons. It gives you all of these stats with a bonus on skill hit, max damage increased by 25 for 6 seconds, and recover 21 mana, cooldown 30 seconds. Damn, that looks pretty good. You can get a ton of hits out in 6 seconds on a crossbow. Easily get a massive amount of mana back, and I think that's pretty much what people will use that crossbow for, to compensate for mana issues. If we want to compare the base damage versus normal tier 1 weapons, you can see it's higher. This is like 124, and the tier 2 nearly 140. A load of attributes and a bunch of bonus damage. You will also have a Black Anvil crossbow, simply with the bonus for farming, and then the crossbows of the Darkest Night, simply obtained by killing enemies, like over here in the new areas, and it gives you all of these stats with the bonus, quick fire cooldown, reset when you use Nimble Leap. So pretty much just saves you from having to get this specialization, which costs you 10 points. Then a new Archboss crossbow, Giant Cordy's Domination Bow, coming from, yes, Giant Cordy in the new areas. It gives you all of these stats with the effect. At 10 gale stacks, explodes and deals 150% of base damage to all enemies within 3 meters with an 80% chance to apply collision pull and pull the target into the center. So it's pretty much creating a bit of a vacuum effect, but 3 meters radius is pretty tiny. Then we have the Moonlight Rapid Fire crossbow, again simply obtained by killing enemies in like open world dungeons, and it will give you these stats, and it's a basic one with no extra bonus. Finally, the Unrelenting Annihilation crossbows. This will be obtained also just by killing regular enemies, mobs in your zones. It gives you these stats with the bonus Wild Barrage, and that simply just gives you the Wild Barrage specialization, changing it to a cone effect. But the damage is increased by 15% and your movement speed is increased by 20% while using the skill. You get a whole lot of attributes and some extra crit chance. Ultimately, yeah, the new tier 2 crossbows will definitely outshine all of the tier 1 crossbows, except for Queen Belandier's, which will be upgradable to the level of tier 2 at level 12, having pretty much the same amount of base damage as the other Archboss crossbow will get. So it's pretty much down to just the bonuses from those, but it is kind of weird that a lot of them, as you can see in the description of the bonus, just going to save you specialization points. This one here as well. From there we move on to our longbows. We begin with the Arc of Lunar Radiance, easily obtained by just killing enemies in your open world dungeons, and it will give you all of these stats with a bonus of increasing your attack speed by 6% per friendly target within the Nature's Blessings area. Effect duration 6 seconds. Then there's Burkant's Iron String Bow, simply obtained through co-op dungeons. It'll give you these stats along with the bonus Limuni's Last Shot. So on a critical hit with decisive sniping or decisive bombardment, the cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds, applies up to 3 stacks, and critical hit chances of decisive sniping and decisive bombardment are increased by 20% as well. You will also be able to get a Black Anvil bow, simply for farming. And then we have the Deadeye bow. You'll obtain this one simply by killing enemies in your open world dungeons, and it'll give you all of these stats, and it's a basic bow with no bonus. Then the new Archbow, Del Zunoa's Frostbow, coming from that Archboss It'll give you all these stats, massive amount of base damage, and Arrow Vortex will deal 120% of base damage to all enemies within 3 meters of the initial target, and has an 80% chance to apply collision pull, send target airborne for 3 seconds. The effect is transferred to another target within 5 meter radius area once and deals damage up to 6 times. There is a requirement on that though, it does not stack with the Tornado specialization. Then there's the Leviathan's Bloodwind Bow, simply from a field boss, the Leviathan. That gives you all of these stats with the bonus of Zephyr's Knock. It shoots an additional projectile up to 2 targets within 2 meters, dealing damage equal to 340% of base damage, and Zephyr's Knock damage is also increased by 8%. And then we have the Titan Spine Bow. This one will come from just killing regular enemies out in your open world, and it'll give you these stats with the bonus Deadly Grave. Creates an area in a 3 meter radius around Brutal Arrow's target location that deals 40% of base damage every half second for 5 seconds. And that's it for all the new bows upcoming. Keep in mind again, the Tevent bow, the Archboss weapon we can get right now, will be able to be upgraded to level 12. Will have nearly as good base damage as the new Archboss weapon. In terms of raw damage, Tevent's will probably still be better, with the new Delzunoa's one just being more support. And across all of the other tier 2 weapons, the base damage is significantly higher than what you find on the tier 1s, so you'll definitely be replacing any of them that you have. Definitely don't go out of your way to buy, say, Aelon's Rejuvenating Longbow, because the base damage increase on other bows is just going to make it outperform this. Then we move to our staffs. We first of all have the Abyssal Renaissance Foci. This will be obtainable just by killing regular enemies out in the open world. It'll give you all these stats with the bonus of Lightning Spear. It becomes a lightning skill and will no longer decrease the movement. It will attack the target the user has burned, dealing additional damage equal to the remaining burn damage, and if the target is frosted or wet, the damage is transferred once to another enemy within 5 meters. Then we have Archpriest's Grace. This one will come from your open world dungeons, killing your mobs. It will simply give you these stats without any special effect. You will also be able to get a Black Anvil Staff for your farming of Solanton Mastery. There is another field boss one, Dagon's Fire Sword. Honestly, don't know why it's called a sword when it's a staff. Maybe it's just incorrectly named. But it will give you all of these stats with the bonus Staff Fire Skills damage increased by 5% and burning damage increased by 15%. A ton of base damage with that too. Then the new Archboss weapon, Delzuna's Ice Wand from that said Archboss, giving you all these stats with the bonus Delzunoa's Hail. Hellfire Rain changes to Ice Rain. The range changes to 5 meters and rain quantity increases to 18. Removes burning effects, damage increases by 25%, and has an 80% chance to weaken targets, reducing their movement speed. So this is like a support effect, going to help your teammates against the burning effects and then debuff the enemies. Massive attack range increase and decent cooldown speed reduction. And just comparing the base damage 234 versus the Queen Belandir's one, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more, but Queen Belandir's is most likely still going to be the best for dealing damage. But we still have the Grey Eyes Lightning Wood. This is a co-op dungeon weapon, and at max it's going to give you all of these stats with the bonus of Staff's Thunderstorm skill, the damage is increased by 5%, and the mana cost is reduced by 10%. And finally, there's the Ebon Soulwind Arch Staff, not from an Archboss, just from, say, regular enemies out in your zones, and it's going to give you the bonus of Icebound Gust, binds enemies within the Frost Smoke Screen area for 1.4 seconds. Ultimately, from what I can see, Queen Belandir's will still be the best for dealing damage against multiple targets. That explosion effect can be absolutely insane, but there are definitely some new viable options here, with the new Archboss weapon being an interesting support effect. You'll definitely want to be upgrading, since there's such a big base damage difference between the tier 2 ones and the tier 1s. it's very likely you don't want to be using the Talus staff, as you'll miss quite a bit of damage, and you can see what the Korean's value added here now. But now we're going to move on to wands. Let's see what's in store for healers. Again, they will get a Black Anvil wand with the bonus to farming Solent and Mastery. And then we have the Codex of Deep Secrets. This one will come from just regular enemies out in the open world and has these bonuses with the benefit of Nightmarish Magic Circle. So the Corrupted Magic Circle changes to a skill that covers a 5-meter area around the user for 5 seconds, increasing damage by 25%. And be aware that will not stack with the specific specializations of the Magic Circle, Decaying Touch and Rotten Swamp. Then we have Deckman's Phantom Demon Wand. This is a new field boss weapon, and it will give you these stats with the bonus of Deckman's Rampage. Your Ray of Disaster damage increases by 25%, and the target number increases to 4 with target's expansion. Then there's the Forbidden Demonic Eye. This will come from your open world dungeons here, and it's a basic one, just giving you these stats with no special effect. Then your new Archboss Weapon, Giant Cordy's Spore Hand, dropping from that said Archboss, will give you all of these stats and Giant Cordy's Blessing. When you cast Absolute Barrier, you become immune to Bind, Petrification, Sleep, Stun for 2 seconds, and the effect is boosted by 50%. I'm fairly sure that means Blessed Barrier. That could be a very neat effect. Then we have King Kanzazian's Valor Song, simply from co-op dungeons, giving you these stats and then giving a boost to your Absolute Barrier. The damage is increased by -5%, I assume the damage reduction, and the incoming healing increased by 10%. Then there's the Overture of Eternal Salvation. You'll just have to kill regular enemies to get them in the open world. It gives you these stats and the bonus Invigorating Salvation. So when you hit with Clay Salvation or Janus Rage, you will heal for an additional 50% off health per second for 6 seconds. That's using this or with its specialization. And that is pretty much it for all the new wands. Again, you'll definitely want to use a tier 2 wand because of the fact the base damage is so much higher. For example, the Archboss one is 146 versus the tier 1 wands is only like 117, 104, 100. And your Excavator wand, they don't value it very highly here at all, only has 132 base damage. But since there's no real bonus that replaces Excavator's Breath with the extra heal on Swift Healing, it could still be useful. And in terms of Archboss weapons, the Tevent one will still be very good for the damage, although they did nerf it recently, I believe. It doesn't combo so well with, say, Sleep anymore. And the new Archboss weapon will be more of a support effect for your group, but you would have to time that very well. So lastly, we go to spears. Again, they will get a Black Anvil one, simply for farming, Solent and Mastery. And then we have the Blind Greed's Murdering Spear, a very simple one coming from your open world dungeons, just with these stats and no extra special effect. Then your Crimson Carnage Spear, simply from co-op dungeons, will give you all these stats and the bonus of Crimson's Lantern. Damage dealt with Vicious Fury, Brutal Fury, or Explosive Fury is increased by 8%, and on a critical hit, the cooldown of Cyclonic Fury and Phoenix Barrage decreased by 5% proportional to the time remaining. That could actually be very powerful for damage output. Then the new Archboss Spear, the Delzonoaz, simply from that Archboss, will have these stats, a massive amount of attributes, and the bonus, Rising Slash, can be used in the target's direction, 80% chance to cause collision push on targets while charging, and targets that collide with a wall are stunned. So you now have a bit of a charge ability. Probably a little bit more noticeable than the Queen Belandir's one, which unfortunately the pull is pretty underwhelming. But the Delzonoaz has actually 331 base damage versus Belandir only having 315. But then we have the Mad Wraith Sphere Spear. This is going to simply come from killing enemies in the open world, and it has the bonus of these stats and a special effect of, upon defeating an enemy with the spear, you have a 25% chance to inflict fear upon 2 enemies within an 8-meter radius for 5 seconds. That could actually be pretty powerful. At least if you're dive bombing and actually getting a lot of kills. 5 seconds is a long time. Then there is the new Field Boss Spear. This one coming from your Pakilo Naru. And it gives you these stats with the bonus on damaging a target with a spear skill. All CC resistance increased by 25 for 3 seconds. Once per skill. Stacks up to 10 times. That's pretty huge. 250 CC resistance. Could help out as a tank there. Or just general survivability in PvP if you're taking a lot of hits. But then there's the Stormy Wind Spear. You'll have to go to your open world dungeons, kill these enemies, and it'll give you these stats with the bonus Wind Blades. When Spiral Slash lands as a heavy attack, I assume you can use it an additional time. The translation's pretty terrible there. But Spiral Slash is basically the follow-up attack of Culling Arc. Or if you have it as Flaming Arc, same thing. And that's it. Again, these new spears will definitely outrank any of the other ones we're using, although I sorely will miss the range increase to like nearly 270 is hard to pass up on. And the new Archboss one even getting to 330. This is again with like basic stats. And your Queen Belandir's spear here has 315 as we showed earlier. The Juno Boat Spear here in Korea doesn't seem to sell for much. The base damage is not that far behind though from the other tier 2 weapons, so I think it could still be very useful and powerful for the damage effect. Again, I can't tell for sure as I haven't actually got that thing to test it out. I think I'll just wait though. I'm pretty happy with the Resistance Spear, especially in PvP because that range increase can be just huge. But that's it for all the upcoming tier 2 weapons that we know of so far from the Korean server. Again, we aren't fully sure when we will actually get this big update with the new area unlocked, new story questline, a whole load of new gear, open world dungeons, etc, etc. But it is supposedly within the first quarter of 2025, so anytime soon. My guess is probably sometime around March. Just want to give you guys a heads up, as you might want to consider not spending so much on some weapons like Field Boss ones or maybe even Archboss weapons just before we get these tier 2 weapons and end up, getting a bit of buyer's remorse when all of a sudden the prices crash. So once again, thanks for watching. A special thank you to these channel members for the extra support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.